Hello there. Yes, thanks, Paul, and thanks for joining us, everyone. Well, this panel should follow on quite nicely from the previous one. We've taken a look at the sort of overview effect of coronavirus on the industry and the user behavior in it. And so we're going to zoom in now on the effects of coronavirus on marketing in terms of past, present and future effects. So we're going to touch on all those things. And we've got a great panel, as you said. My name is Joe Sparrow. I am the editor of Music Ally TV here in Berlin. And I'm going to go through our guests in alphabetical order. We've got Aaron Bogucki, head of UK marketing and audience development at AWAL Recordings. Hello, Aaron.
Hello,
thank you for joining us. We have Gaurav Wadhwa, CEO and co-founder of Big Bang Music in India. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you for joining us. We've got a very international panel stretching across time zones, which is, so I'm very grateful for you hanging around, Gaurav. And last but by no means least, Nikoo, Sadr, Director of Artist and Label Services in the Nordics for The Orchard, and she is in Sweden. Hello, Nikoo. I think you're still on mute. Maybe we can...
having some audio problems. She posted in the chat.
Ah, okay, right. Can we hear you, Nikoo?
Hello, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to talk, but I'm the only one that can't hear anything, I think, when you're talking.
Ah, okay. Well, maybe we can find a solution to that as we keep going. But we can hear you. We can hear you fine. That's great.
Yeah.
So we'll try and find a way through that one as we move on. So perhaps I was going to actually throw the first part of this discussion to Nikoo, but while we're waiting for her, we're going to we'll go reverse alphabetical then and go to Gaurav straight away. So while we have these three people here, if you've got any questions for them, please use the Q&A button. Hit the button at the bottom of the screen. You can ask them anything. We'll try and get some questions to them if we have time. We only have 35 minutes. So after the session, we're going to ask the panelists to hang around and answer them, some of them by text in the Q&A session as well. So please do pop your answers in there. So Gaurav, let's start with you. We heard in the previous panel about the overall effect of coronavirus on the industry, user behavior, but let's talk about marketing. What have you seen about how the pandemic has affected music marketing practices? What have those effects looked like from your perspective?
Oh, well, of course, it's been more than 6 months now, and I think a large part of the industry has adapted to the new normal. I think initially it was the big change for everyone was the physical access to marketing, which meant going to radio stations to promote your song, going to live experiences, campuses, gigs, and things like that. And I think a large part of the ecosystem here, at least in India, has adapted, and social platforms are huge here. We've in fact had a big change in the scene over the last 2 months where TikTok was banned, as you would have heard, and that resulted in almost 7-8 TikTok clones having launched on the same week. So we're actually, in a situation where the digital music ecosystem is actually bursting, and there's more platforms than music today. But I think it's been a tough time for most businesses. It's been a tough time for artists. It's been a tough time marketing music. But I think there have been a lot of silver linings for us here in India, especially because of the nature of our music ecosystem. We've largely been driven by music from films. 90% of it comes from Bollywood. And because the shoots have stopped and film releases have stopped, that's actually given a rise to a huge independent culture. And it's allowed a lot of streaming platforms to build discovery for independent artists, which they naturally never did because there was so much focus on Bollywood, whether it was homepage placements or playlists and things like that. And I think that's given birth to new genres, new niches. People are discovering new sounds, new artists. There has been a lot of push by streaming. We heard about live streaming in the previous panel. It's been very good for independent artists again, and that's become the new go-to platform for marketing. So I think all in all, it's been a very, very good, conversion from being on the back foot because you couldn't do marketing the normal way to finding new innovations. And I think that's what every industry does, right? When they're up against the wall, they come up with something interesting. So in fact, I'm launching one of my biggest songs till date tomorrow, and we have a very, very interesting way to market. We're just launching a co-branded mask. So we want to. The song's called Unbelievable. We're living in unbelievable times, and we've found new ways to take the song franchise to fans and hopefully monetize it as well.
Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, of course.
Absolutely.
Well, I was going to go to you first, Nikoo. Let's see how this is happening. Let's throw you in the deep end. So maybe we can unmute you, Nikoo. So I was saying, what is the? Can you talk about this sort of that overall effect of the pandemic on music marketing practices? What have you seen from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about the all of a sudden.
We can hear you perfectly now.
Great. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a little bit different. It's been interesting for me to follow because I work for a really global company where we keep close in touch. But obviously I'm based in Stockholm, so we're the country that has been slightly kind of differentiated from other territories. So I think that has actually impacted perhaps the way that marketing as well. But I think the main thing that we saw was really like that goes across the board was the awakening of all the labels and artists that kind of have been sleeping a bit or have been hesitant towards social media, and now like realizing how important that is for them. And also the fact that they might have had, a lot of people work 2 jobs, so they might have had one job that was on hold during COVID, and then they can focus on their label business, for example. So that's been kind of a massive difference. And I think that's been the main thing that I've had to, when starting out, when COVID, kind of when everyone was on lockdown, that's been the main thing.
Right.
That
Okay.
you had to focus on.
We'll dig into all these in a minute. Thank you, Nikoo. And Aaron, last but by no means least, of course, what have you seen in terms of, from your perspective, what are the changes that you've seen? What's the effect been on marketing, music marketing?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads to get through. Just to jump off what Nikoo just said, I mean, my background and my career has always been with digital marketing and working with artists on developing audiences online. And I've always, what was really interesting at the beginning was, all the things we were trying to get artists to do that maybe they were hesitant to do, now they were forced to do it, which was exciting for me and great to see. But at the same time, it put a lot of pressure on them. And we work with a lot of developing artists, and I noticed very quickly early on, obviously they were dealing with everything we're all dealing with as a people and as a culture globally, but also they have this added pressure to now you're the one that have the keys. You really have to drive this across a number of platforms. So we really saw a lot of platform fatigue, and we still are. But obviously we're all aware of like losing touring and the increase of kind of live streaming gigs. But what we're also seeing is like early on, so 2 or 3 months into the lockdown, CPMs were super cheap. Like brands didn't really know what to do, and I think music marketers and the agencies pivoted really quickly, and we were getting really, really cheap CPMs across the world. So we were taking advantage of that. But also what we were seeing is like we were seeing a very big increase in YouTube consumption at home amongst families, amongst adults. But also on the other side of that, we lost the commuter listener, which I think we really took for granted, right? In our industry, right? It's like people get on the train or get in their car and they listen to Release Radar, or they listen to Discover Weekly, or they listen to their favorite playlist. And you do see these sort of daily spikes there, and you started to see that really trail off. And it's, I guess, normalized a bit now, but like, I think we really took like that for granted, like in going into this.
I do think on the other hand, like you said, like the commuter listening was kind of like, that was a bit cut off, but you have this other type of listening that kind of appeared that was interesting, and it could like benefit the mood playlist, that kind of music. Of course, like being, the people that were working with music that calms you down, or, the nighttime listening, that was quite interesting to see that's kind of have been the effect.
I think that's like, when you look at, and one of the things I think about, what music needs to lend at this time is that escape, and is that calming, sort of help to listener. And I think also on the other side of it, I think we'll talk about a little bit about, some of the best albums that have come out. When you look at Dua Lipa, right? That was a dance record. That was a dance party pop record. And I think it gave everyone a really great release they kind of needed, in that time. And I really kind of looked at that as like, it's a really good example of that release, right? But then when you think about sort of day-to-day marketing stuff, right? When you think about how much it costs to like film content right now, or where you can film content at right now, right? Like we have increased costs of PPE, right? We have to move locations for video shoots because we can't fit the amount of people into the shoot that we need to do.
Yeah.
Or we have artists who are higher risk, unfortunately, with underlying health problems that we can't film. So there's a lot of complexity added there. And then Gaurav mentioned as well, like there's no in-market promo trips, right? There's no artist meetings at DSPs, right? So we've had to get really creative and even put it back on the artists, like everything. Jonathan, who's a singer of everything, did a really great video of him walking through a park that was really trippy that we only sent to DSPs, him talking about why he wrote the record or where the songs are coming from. Those stories would be told in person normally, right? But we had to get really creative and stylized around how we communicated that.
So what we've seen is, sorry, Aaron, is a sort of wholesale change. Of course, a shift in everything societally with coronavirus. But what you've touched on there, and everyone's touched on, is the sort of very quick change in approach, not just through in sort of channels to approach people, but actual creative techniques as well, which actually perhaps use different technologies in different ways, or take advantage of cheap various ways of contacting people, or just a creative to cut through and connect in a time when that's difficult. So perhaps I could sort of quickly go around the three of you and sort of perhaps gauge from you've named a few there, but are there any other campaigns or approaches you've been particularly impressed by? We've sort of seen ones that tie in with perhaps merchandise in terms of the mask and certain artists breaking through because of the genre, but are there any approach, it doesn't have to be a particularly famous example, it could just be an example you think particularly work well and might indicate a way forward? Gaurav, let's start with you again.
Yeah, so I think what we've seen, and again, someone touched upon it in the last panel, is gaming is huge for music marketing in India. Suddenly, we've had, of course, a lot of mobile gaming, PUBG being really big, Freeverse, etc. And we're suddenly seeing that there's a growing audience on YouTube, which is consuming gaming content that is now using music into their videos. And we're seeing influencer and marketing agencies in the music space leveraging these cohorts a lot more. We of course don't have Twitch in India, but there's enough on YouTube right now on gaming for us to tap into that. The other example that we're actually working on, and we're very similar to AWAL in our DNA. We also do a lot of brand work between music and brands and artists. We've just cracked a deal with a QSR brand. It's an in-home food delivery service. They created a brand of biryani, which is, chicken and rice, essentially, for those who don't know it. And they've signed up with one of our hip-hop artists. He's one of the pioneers in India. His name is Nazy. And because there was a DNA fit between the brand they were trying to build and the artist, we ended up collaborating at an equity level where all our music goes on to the biryani boxes. So we get, and then we put QR codes there for Spotify, etc. So we suddenly, in a pandemic situation where you cannot go out, you cannot meet, but the food delivery is on a rise and biryani is the most sold food item on delivery, we've suddenly built a new distribution model, which essentially drives discovery. And, the biryani packs can come with, fun lines from his rap or whatever we want to put on it, and drive people to the music. So
that's a really fascinating,
yeah.
That's a really fascinating example that you've mentioned there, and perhaps perhaps the others have noticed this as well, where artists are able to collaborate with platforms and brands that are perhaps in the past were outside of that ecosystem. People are collaborating with perhaps, like you said, food apps and delivery services, but also
it's still digitally driven, but it's still an old world format of marketing. So it's kind of like a hybrid that is getting developed.
We had a similar campaign. We didn't get it out the door, unfortunately, but we had the same thought of like going back to Nikoo's point about mood is like, how do we, if people are getting food deliveries and, food packets and this kind of Blue Apron type things, how do we create a soundtrack for that, that experience, right? People put on music when they're cooking. So same thing, we're trying to think of the context of the fan and what they were doing at that time and trying to layer in the marketing over that, for sure.
And I also think that comes from the artists themselves as well. Like a lot of people have had time to think and like maybe think about, it's not always the fact that like brands doesn't have to be, it could be thinking about, environmental changes or thinking about what's going on in the world with the Black Lives Matter movement. How can we work with those, how can we I involve myself as an artist with that, where I kind of align with my values. So those type of things where normally you wouldn't see those because you might not, as an artist that is on tour or whatever, might not be having the time to think about it until you're at home.
So what we're seeing is artists and artist teams being highly creative in the ways that they've connected. And I'm sure that it must have been as well as being complicated, but quite an exciting time to be working, because you've got lots of opportunities open up for you. One of you, perhaps it was Aaron, I can't remember, unfortunately, mentioned a little bit earlier that artists are therefore sort of perhaps they might feel under a bit of pressure to be in lots of different places and to do lots of different collaborations. And all of a sudden, they're sort of feeling that wider pressure more than ever when they're suddenly engaging with all these things in a new way. Do you think that is correct, or is it just how should an artist view this opportunity of all these different types of collaboration and creative activation?
Yeah, I think is it Amici, that gentleman before on the panel before, the Run the Jewels manager, made a really good point. It's kind of not every artist is going to act in the same way, and they have to work with their own comfort levels, right? And I think artists are artists, and you can give them the opportunities and put it in front of them, and give them ideas, but at the end of the day, it has to come from an authentic place, right? And so, if you have artists who are, going out and producing live streams on their own, or if they're starting, like Tory Lanez did with Quarantine Radio, where it felt very, very on brand to just, hey, I'm just going to go live on Instagram for a long period of time, play music, chat with my fans. That sometimes comes naturally to some artists. I wish all artists that I work with felt that way, but unfortunately that's not the case, right? So you have to start with the audience. That's what we do, right? We really kind of drill into, the target audiences, what channels and platforms are they on, what affinities do they have, and then layering that over the artist's creativity, the artist's affinities. And a lot of times, going back to what Gaurav said, hopefully it does land on gaming, right? We've got a forthcoming campaign from Unit 6 that one of our marketers is running that has an incredible rollout of gaming across Twitch over the campaign. It's very central to the campaign. We have a young pop star, Elena Castillo, who's a gamer who goes live on Twitch quite a bit on Animal Crossing. We're building an audience around that. So you have to play to artist strengths, but you have to layer it into the affinities of the audience. Otherwise, you're just kind of, you're kind of all over the place. You're very
Nikoo, when if you talk to emerging artists or even bigger artists, in the past sometimes they've felt pressure to be on platforms and engaging in a way perhaps that they would not naturally do. They have to do Instagram, but they don't like Instagram. But now what we're seeing is that they can pretty much operate wherever they want as long as they feel comfortable and they find the right place. How do you, as a marketer, how do you actually work with an artist to say, right, let's find your absolute true authentic self and find the platforms that work for you?
I think it's actually it's pretty much one of the things that haven't changed, that will always remain the same, of picking up the things that an artist is talking about, the things that they're passionate about. Like I said, they could be movements that were specific issues that they're passionate about. And that's actually about having, partly, obviously getting to know the music, and also don't forget the fans, as Aaron mentioned. But I do think I pick it up by the artist themselves, talking about, they might not think about it in a marketing sense, but they are obviously passionate. They have hobbies, they have things that they do that they are passionate about, and they are actually more open to posting about it nowadays. For some reason, COVID really brought that they took away a little bit of the scaredness that a lot of artists had around social media, which was a good thing.
Why is that? Do you have any idea why that might be? Because I've heard that a number of times from people.
Yeah, I think it was just the fact that you at first you felt like you didn't have a choice. That was because you want to be able to connect to people. And if you're stuck at home and you can't connect to people, that is the way that you can connect. If you had that little bit of where you could go out and you could go for a coffee or whatever, you might not, or if you were busy with a tour, you might not have thought about those things. Actually realize the benefits of connecting with your audience directly on a platform, and that it doesn't have to be what a lot of artists, for example, might see as salesy. It could be, it's just them, connecting to their audience. And I feel like that's been an inner desire that have come out more prevalent.
Yeah. Does the panel think that this
if I may add to that?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
We've actually had a very interesting situation in India because of the number of platforms. I think to Nikoo's point, one, I think artists have a lot more time in the pandemic, right? So they started thinking about these things. And I think initially we saw a lot of artists they just want to take a break, and a lot of them, tour very heavily. But I think as they started getting more time on hand, they started developing an affinity for platforms. And the other thing that happened was that they started realizing that if they are not on these platforms, they are going to lose relevance. So it's no longer about anything else but survival by virtue of being relevant. And they started seeing other artists who were either already big on social platforms. They did not lose monetization because of live, because brands started working a lot more with them, or it was these live streaming platforms like Instagram and all of the others who started working with these digitally savvy artists. And I think a lot of the artists started realizing they'll become irrelevant, and they were forced to adopt some of these platforms. And then we have such a vast choice that people can actually pick platforms based on what fits their DNA versus just going to TikTok and just hating it. So that really helped. And then of course now we're in a situation where all these platforms are paying top dollar to these artists to come onto the platform. So it's a new revenue stream that they just cannot ignore because live has literally gone out of the window. So I think it's a combination of these things that have really made everyone, not just artists, brands as well, really adopt digital. It's just not a choice anymore.
Aaron, I think you had.
And really to your point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Nikoo.
I wanted to say to your point, like the fact that they're thinking about their revenue streams, and transparency becomes super important when it comes to this. Like you're actually seeing, okay, what's actually coming in, and what it makes it more important because with touring, you might not have noticed that as much, but when that is your only option, then you're thinking about those type of things, what's actually happening more.
Yeah, I think just this all fits in exactly with the point I was going to make, which is, we're talking about, live and touring completely disappearing for all artists, right? Mostly. And we work with a lot of developing artists, young artists who are still working on who they are as an artist and developing that brand and how they want to engage with their audiences. And I think revenue is a massive part of what's being taken away from these artists. But I think what we really also have to think about is, and it plays to the social side as well. Everything that happens around a tour for a young artist is so important, right? Being on stage, trying your music out, playing it for audiences, seeing what works, what doesn't work, what gets a reaction, things that happen on off stage, right? On the bus, when you're being fed, there's those stories happen. That's where songs get written, right? Like there's so many other organic things that happen around a show for an artist that helps them develop. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing young artists missing right now, right? And you're not going to sit on Twitch and develop as an artist. You're not going to, you might write a song about Twitch. I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe it's a hit, right? But at the end of the day, like, I really don't believe that an artist sitting on Twitch or sitting on these live stream platforms, although it might be great to engage an audience, it doesn't further your sort of creative development or your personal artist development.
Do you think
I do actually, I have a counter argument on there. But
good, I was hoping someone would. That's what I was going to ask for, so go ahead.
I was just thinking, because I've seen so many artists being creative with on TikTok. I think Nina Nesbitt has been like amazing during quarantine. She's coming up with these like little funny tracks and songs, and I think obviously that comes from her creativity and connecting with the audience as well that way. But yeah, I thought that's stuff that I've seen.
Yeah, sure.
Live, as Aaron says, has historically been an enormous part of the music industry in terms of marketing, in that it allows people to go to places and play, of course, but also develop as an artist. And that is something which will still be important. But could we be entering a sort of phase, you think, where from perhaps a marketing and artist development perspective, actually artists might develop into different types of performance? Maybe online performance. Like you say, Aaron, maybe, yeah, I mean, not many people want to hear songs about being on Twitch. Just like we don't like rock stars. We don't really like hearing rock stars sing that much about how difficult it is being on the road and being a millionaire rock star. But could we be entering a period where that kind of, there's some sort of marketing and artist development by performing in a new sort of way online? Gaurav, let's go to you.
Yeah, I definitely see that change will happen. I mean, we're seeing this 15-second phenomenon, which is thanks to TikTok and similar platforms. I'm seeing a lot of producers. So in fact, earlier, the songs in India would be about 3.5 minutes. They've kind of gone down to about 1.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. But what we're now seeing is that artists are creating 15-second demos, because a lot of the bigger songs in the market are getting discovered by the 15-second sound on platforms like TikTok. So people are definitely changing their styles of making music. They're changing sounds basis, what is working on platforms. Earlier, it used to be what worked on radio, what worked on, live, but now it's like they're also taking into account what works as a 15-second sound. We have an artist called Conqueror, I think from the Caribbean, who created a song called Banana, and it did 2 billion views on TikTok in India. Nobody had heard that song, but they had heard that 15-second clip which, you know, he didn't even know that clip is going to go so big. And now Conqueror wants to collaborate with Indian artists because he realizes that he's one of the most streamed Indian artists who's not even available on Spotify, by the way, because, you know, his label doesn't distribute to India. So it's a crazy world out there, and you never know what formats start building out from just you know, platform out kind of approach.
So we've got 10 minutes left, and there's two things I want to do really, which is I want to have a look, I want to sort of move the conversation towards what is the future going to look like in that. But there's one question perhaps I can drag in from the Q&A section. If you do have any questions, please hit the Q&A button and pop them in there. And it goes to perhaps what you were saying just then, Gaurav, and what you're all touching on. It's good to have an international panel to ask this question too. How has the increased access, you know, everyone is artists are at home and accessing the world everywhere, has that affected, now that they're sort of more obviously and forced to interact with the world simultaneously, has that affected how an artist campaign is rolled out internationally? Nikoo, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I think it's one of those things where there's like two forces against each other. So that what Aaron mentioned before with in-market promo activities and like opportunities kind of disappear, but that gives you a whole other axis of like for an artist to think about. And especially when you have a live stream, you can have anyone watching, and like what they were talking about the other panel as well, access is key. And I think that's been I think actually one of the main things has been that you also think about incorporating those things in pretty much every marketing campaign, because there is no other option. So I think that it does open up a whole new world, and it kind of makes it that you can bring in an artist that perhaps because of the costs or whatever from before, you wouldn't focus on, and you focus on them earlier in other markets because you are waiting on building it up in the profile market first, but now you have the access. So if you're seeing something, if you're seeing people reacting or fans coming in from, even if it's a little bit, you can actually work on building that out.
Great. Aaron, what do you think about that, about hitting the international?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm really proud of the international team we have at AWAL. That we really do from day one really do focus on many markets, not just, you know, UK or US. And so we do, like at the very beginning, a lot of homework, a lot of market research, a lot of working with our teams globally to really identify which markets need focus, and then really deep, you know, hiring teams on the ground or creating specific content there. What I love doing and working with our national team is even some of our media, you know, Spotify advertising, getting really creative with the audio that's in there. You know, we're really obsessed with making sure that, you know, we're speaking in the right languages. We get the artist to kind of say hello in the local language on the Spotify ad, because we know it might perk someone's ears up a bit more than just saying hello in English. So we really do focus on that, you know, from the beginning. But yeah, to Nikoo's point, right? Like, you know, music is accessible everywhere. And we're just seeing, and I think goes back to Chaz's point on the previous panel with trigger cities. Again, that's something that we've been looking at for a long time, and we really enjoy testing things out, right? And finding, you know, like, you know, trigger markets, and he's talking about trigger audiences as well, and we've spoken to Chaz about there. But, you know, with Lauv and a lot of the pop stuff that we have, and some of the bedroom pop stuff, you know, Philippines are mad for that type of sound. And we know that if we go to Manila and we focus on there early, we can drive algorithms, which is going to drive more discoverability across the platform, right, in other parts of Southeast Asia, so Thailand, Indonesia. And I think this is all kind of common knowledge now, and India, of course, as well. But, you know, we look at those as sort of like test markets almost before we kind of move things into other areas. But yeah, you have to think globally from day one, otherwise I think you're missing.
But what's interesting is that there's just two movements happening at the same time. So you have, like, you know, when we're working and all of our teams are going towards one goal, and, you know, you have BTS and Bad Bunny, like that works globally, but then you also have local hip hop that is super regional, and like we were saying, like, you know, you can have those and that might not spread over borders. So there's this like two simultaneous movements that are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the future then. We've sort of discussed the effects and the really good things we're seeing now, and the changes and the challenges that you face. What is the future of music marketing going to look like? I'm not asking you to predict how coronavirus is going to play out, though. If you do know, let us know. But I mean, someone needs to know. But I mean, what do you think this change is now permanent, in terms of we have a much more diversified and fragmented music marketing marketplace, Nikoo, as you said, that you've got simultaneous streams happening, and, you know, what what is that going to look like in the future, and is that advantageous? Gaurav, let's start with you again.
We also have an interesting Q&A question. We could probably take it after this. But I feel like I'd like to believe that this is not the normal. We will go back to how it was earlier with a lot more live and human interaction, and hopefully the new adoption on digital will add back to that. So I think it's still early days to really predict how it will be. I think the only thing we can do as artists and labels and music marketeers is just keep evolving and keep putting the music out in whichever way we can. And I think everyone will find a way to evolve with time. I don't really have a prediction of whether this is the future or not.
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I apologize. I mean, you, Gaurav, are operating in an extremely exciting and rapidly evolving space in India. Do you think that these new streams of income that you're marketing to are actually going to augment what was there before? So you're going to have a much bigger pie to take a slice from in the end?
For sure, because I think what a lot of companies like us are also moving towards is creating artist brands, and as independent music becomes bigger, they bring in more opportunities for revenue across. Otherwise, it's always been film music breaking in the moolah and not really sharing it with anyone. But now with merchandise and other forms, it's going to become much larger. And I think also live has never been a big revenue spinner for artists in India. It's really just something that exists more for the experience. So I think even on live and the integration to live streaming, ticketing is becoming much larger. So I feel that pandemic is going to force the ecosystem to help make money for the artists in the long run.
Great, thanks, Gaurav. Nikoo, same for you. It's a big question, but how does the future look from your perspective? And is there more to play with now?
I think to continue on that, when you're looking at revenue streams, I think we're already there was talks, there's been talks for years about, tipping systems, or for a long time it was only Twitch and YouTube that have kind of like the fan funding system, where you can kind of see it. Obviously it's not it's COVID related, but you can in a way see it on Spotify. You can definitely see it on Facebook with the stars. So like I think that's coming, because we need to generate those type of income streams. And I also think I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but artists have had time to think, and I think it's because I'm we're going through it as an organization that's really focused on it as well. But in terms of like social justice issues and actually standing for something and reflecting over and having transparency across a whole company, that also is important.
And I guess that extends to the character of the artist as well. People are really genuinely interested in what an artist is really like and what they really mean. Yeah, great. Thanks, Nikoo. And Aaron, what, from your perspective, how does it look? What is the next phase like?
I think it's important to remember like how adaptable musicians, artists, and their teams are, right? Like over the last 20 plus years, like our industry was disrupted arguably first by digital technology, right? Very early, struggled with it for a bit, kind of got a handle on it. Feel like we're getting a bit of a handle on it now in the middle of a pandemic. But yeah, I think it's important to like trust artists, trust their teams to adapt to take advantage of whatever technology is out there. I think the panelists and you were right, Joe. I think there's a lot of fragmentation of audiences. There's a lot of different places to go and engage, but the basics, I believe, are still there, right? Like go build an audience somewhere, go build an audience on social, wherever it might be, but bring them into a place where you can own that data. That's really important. And I think it's easily lost sometimes. I mean, we can argue about the power of email, but we can look at SMS. We can look at someplace where, you're not renting audiences. Like you're renting audiences on Twitch. You're renting audiences on Instagram and Facebook or wherever you might be there. You don't own those audiences. What you should be doing is build engagement and building a following, but give them a reason to follow you someplace where you can own and monetize that data, right? And I think, Gaurav, your face mask, right, is a good example, right? Print on demand is super easy and cheap to do now, right? If you have a strong fan base and you've got a cool new song coming out, or you've got some cool meme that happened that your fans wrote in Twitter or wherever else, make merch items out of it, sell it. Like, I hate to do this, but look at how YouTubers do it, right? YouTubers are like, they create new brands, new stuff all the time, and they're monetizing all the time. Don't be shameless, be smart.
You're smart.
Yeah.
Great. And I hate to do this. Great advice. Thanks, Aaron. We have 1 minute left. So I'm going to ask you the total last minute question. One word answers only, please. Are we entering into a more exciting marketing period post-coronavirus? Nikoo, let's start with you.
Yes. I'm going to go for yes, if you only want one.
Gaurav.
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely, yes. That's perfect. And Aaron.
Indeed, for sure. Yes.
Fabulous. Good news. Good news. Okay, thanks, everybody.